Captain Robert Falcon Scott started his career in the Royal Navy when he was just 13 years old. His first big adventure was leading the British National Antarctic Expedition in 1901 as a lieutenant, also known as the Discovery Expedition. This wasn't just about finding unexplored regions on Antarctica. The goal was to learn about Antarctica through science. They sailed from London in August 1901 and reached the Antarctic region in January 1902. During the expedition, Scott and his team studied the rocks, plants, and weather, and even found new places like the Ross Ice Shelf and the Edward VII Peninsula. They set up a winter camp called Hut Point on Ross Island, where they continued their research even through the freezing Antarctic winter. Scott and his team also went on long and dangerous journeys on sledges, reaching a record-breaking southern latitude of 82 degrees south. The Discovery Expedition faced a lot of obstacles. The weather was incredibly harsh, they didn't have enough food or supplies, and the team members were physically and mentally exhausted. Even with all these problems, the expedition was still a success. Scott returned to England in 1904 as a national hero. He was promoted to captain in the Navy and received many awards, including a prestigious medal from the Royal Geographical Society. After the success of the Discovery Expedition, Scott continued his work in the Navy and started planning another trip to Antarctica. This expedition, called the Terra expedition, had two main goals: to reach the South Pole and to carry out more scientific research. The Terra expedition left from Cardiff on June 15, 1910, and arrived at Port Chalmers in New Zealand and left the harbor for Antarctica on November 29, 1910, with 33 dogs, 15 ponies, motor sledges, and 3-year-long provisions for 60 men. The Terra expedition faced numerous challenges, including harsh weather conditions, difficult terrain, and logistical issues. 10 days after leaving New Zealand, the first icebergs were spotted at 65 degrees south latitude. 12 days later, Terra passed the Antarctic Circle threshold, and now the ship is surrounded by ice. She was stuck between the ice for several days. Christmas Eve, they reached 71 degrees south latitude. In January 1911, they spotted the Great Ice Wall, and few hours later, they were at the brink of the Great Ice Barrier, which rose from the sea 250 feet high. Scott and his team made significant progress and established their winter quarters at Cape Evans on Ross Island. They established several depots for their journey to the South Pole. On November 1, 1911, Scott and his team set out on their journey to the South Pole. They used a combination of motor sledges, ponies, and dogs to transport their supplies. However, the motor sledges broke down early in the journey, and the ponies had to be shot as they could not withstand the cold, leaving the men to haul the sledges themselves. On January 17, 1912, Scott and his crew finally made it to the South Pole. But they were crushed to discover that their rival Roald Amundsen had already been there, arriving 35 days earlier. Despite this huge disappointment, they still took pictures and gathered scientific data before heading back. The return journey was a nightmare. The weather got worse and worse, and everyone suffered from frostbite. Edgar Evans died from a head injury. Then Lawrence Oates, whose feet were terribly frostbitten, knew he was slowing everyone down. He bravely walked out into a blizzard and never returned, sacrificing himself to give his friends a better chance of survival. Scott, Dr. Wilson, and Lieutenant Bowers kept fighting the terrible cold, but in the end, they all died from exhaustion, starvation, and the freezing temperatures. By March 21, 1912, Scott and his team were just 11 miles away from their supply depot, where they hoped to find food and gear. But a ferocious blizzard trapped them in their tent, and they couldn't move. On March 25th, Scott wrote a final message. He praised his team's bravery and how hard they fought, and he asked the people of Britain to take care of their families. People started searching for Scott's team when they were overdue. In October 1912, a bigger search party finally found their tent on November 12th. Inside, they found Scott, Wilson, and Bowers, sadly frozen to death. They also found their journals and the first Antarctic fossils ever discovered. The fossils were determined to be from the Glossopteris tree and proved that Antarctica was once forested and had a mild climate. They buried the men under a pile of snow and put up a cross to remember them.